All right.
Let's go.
Freddie, welcome to the Vertical SaaS Podcast. Delighted to be finally doing it, man.
Thanks, Gavin. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was a better decision, doing it in the UK. Why did I think you lived in New York again?
I don't know. I'm there so often. Can't blame you. But actually, haven't done a trip yet this year. Next one coming up soon, though.
Yeah. We for the listeners, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am, of course, your host, Gavin Savage. Today, I am joined by Frederik, who is head of alternative assets at Robin AI. Robin AI is a Legaltech scale-up that's using AI in short to automate contract reviews, slash costs, and dramatically free up legal teams' times.
We should put you on the website.
So before, Freddie and I were meant to record in New York, but we decided, because I then realised he stayed in London, that there was no need to do it in New York, so we opted for pre-podcast strategic drinks on a rooftop in New York.
And we made it count.
But Freddie, before we dive in, I always like to start, if you could give me or give the listeners and myself some more insight into going way back, like into your career, how you get started, obviously corporate lawyer turned entrepreneur, startup founder, to now working with one of the largest, most successful legal techs. But yeah, soup to nuts, give us a bit of a rundown of yourself.
Right. We'd love to. Let's go. So maybe going back to uni, I did a law degree and then bolted on a master's in law and finance, and then essentially did the very typical training contract route into private practice. I thought I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, perhaps, at that point. And I got very lucky because Clifford Chance is a big firm. That's where I did my training contract. And I got very lucky in that I got both a client secondment, so I get to have a look at a private equity firm in-house, CVC Capital Partners. But I also got to go to Singapore and spent 6 months there in the private funds group. And as a 20-something, of course, that was really exciting. Then moved to Simpson Thacher, which is a private equity corporate-focused private practice firm. And that was exciting because they work with a lot of the preeminent private markets firms out there. So your KKRs, Blackstones, Apax, Vista, EQT, you name it. And I did a few years there, and then I think starting in law can be good because it teaches you the essentials. So be on time, how to spin lots of plates at any given time, be trustworthy, know when to talk and when to listen, customer or client first, all of those basics that you can transpose onto any other career. I do think you learn them quicker in private practice just because of the sheer intensity and the amount of hours that you put in. So that was that. I realized fairly quickly already into the training contract that perhaps law wasn't for me in the long term. And that was mostly, that was driven by several things. I think the first one really being that the industry is very, very risk averse, rightly so. I mean, all of the law is about unearthing, mitigating, managing risk, compliance, contractual, regulatory, you name it. But I do think that oftentimes the risk is quite horrendously mispriced. So there's 20% chance of something happening. And if it happens, it's going to cost you $200,000. But the legal fees and the billable hours of trying to mitigate that risk actually go up to $500,000. And so I think I always felt that sometimes we lose sight of the big picture by making sure that we're pragmatic about what we're trying to mitigate against. And then the second thing is that I wanted to be entrepreneurial. I mean, when I was 6 years old, I went house to house in my neighborhood selling herbs from the family garden, having some folks, neighbors, taking pity on me to supplement my pocket money.
Love that.
And so, you know, the chance to be entrepreneurial was really something non-negotiable for me. And lawyers, in essence, administer the decisions of others. They do that really well. If you're a company, you want to open up a manufacturing plant in the Philippines, you need to know how to do that on paper, employment, pension, regulatory compliance. But I always wanted to be the operator on the ground, actually building that and doing that, rather than finding a way on paper how to make it work.
Lovely. And then corporate lawyer wants to be an entrepreneur. And again, before we dive in everything into Robin AI and legal, you know, so many lawyers probably sit and daydream about getting out of the grind of billable hours and, the never-ending hours at work and the weekends on working. Like, for you, that entrepreneurial spirit was obviously inherently in there, but what was the kind of final thing for you that just made you go, no? And then you moved out of law into an e-com startup? Finzu? Yeah.
That's right, consumer
Was
startup.
that moment that just made you go, fuck it, I'm doing it. I'm going to jump and do this, make this leap?
I think the reality is that it's always a bit of a push and a pull. And for me, it was more of a gradual build than a single moment.
Right.
I think the 80, 90 hour weeks and the 3 a.m. due diligence exercises didn't help. They sort of built up that over time. But for me, it was more the pull than the push. So like I said, private practice, you learn a lot, and maybe I could have stayed a little while longer, but it was the pull of getting together with my initial co-founder at the time, who just finished a PhD in the relevant subject, that really was the stars aligning of, okay, let's do this. We've got an idea. We think it's the right time. And so the pull of and the excitement of the new thing was much more of a driver than just the maybe where I am today isn't where I see myself in 5, 10, 20 years' time.
And so how many years were you in law for as a lawyer? How many years?
So I did the 2-year training contract, and then I did just over 2 years at Simpson.
Okay. Well, you lasted
Long enough.
a lot longer than me. I was I didn't,
Oh, yeah, of course.
I didn't even go past the traineeship, but spent a long enough studying it. And so you set up Finzu with your co-founder. A pretty wild ride, I would imagine, because you look at it and within a 3-year turnaround, you build it and sell it. Like, wild.
Yeah, in hindsight, absolutely. When you're in it, you don't necessarily get the time to step away and look at it that way, but absolutely.
Yeah. I put you on the spot a little bit, but what would be the lessons learned? Maybe you've never thought about it, but on hindsight, looking back at it, was there kind of major lessons learned before, I guess, the inevitable jump from Finzu into Robin?
Right. I think the first one would be that founder market fit is really important. So a lot of the winning or the losing is simply by picking the right space. And so this is a learning, because we were fortunate to be able to sell Finzu and to make the most out of it. But I think now that I've moved to Robin, I'm starting to understand just how great it is that you've got an existing network, that you've got domain expertise in the space that you're operating in. Everything, building a business is hard enough.
Yeah.
Doing it in a space that's relatively new to you, which was the case for me with Finzu, is even harder. And so I think picking a space you know well, where you know a lot of people that can help you, is something that gives you a head start. I think the other piece is companies are just groups of people, right? And so I think when it comes to the management side of things, I've always found it helpful to be ultra output focused. So give a person or a team a result or a set of circumstances that you want them to produce, and then let them come up with the way to produce that result, because chances are they are thinking of way smarter things than you are thinking of when you're trying to micromanage them.
Yeah. And again, but that all comes down to the trust in the person, though, because in theory that leadership style is what everyone wants and what everyone wants to do. But I think in practice it's very difficult, because it boils down to who you're hiring.
That's absolutely right. So that's the other learning, I suppose. Perfect tee up. The talent bar has to be non-negotiable.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about that. A players only, and you're not going to get it right every time. When you don't get it right, you have to be both empathetic and move quickly, because if you hire the wrong person, it's not their fault, it's your fault. You've run the wrong process, you weren't looking for the right profile, whatever it might be. And so course correcting with kindness when you've gotten it wrong is really important, but speed is everything. And making sure that you raise the talent bar permanently as the business scales is hugely important, because there are different challenges for different sizes of company.
We'll come back to the topic of speed later on. It's one thing that comes up in every podcast that I do, with every conversation with every founder. It's speed. But before we get into,
I'll try to be more unique.
and so Robin AI, very natural evolution and fit, it would seem. What was the kind of aha moment for you? Sold Finzu, why move to Robin AI?
I think the obvious one is that I was doing all of these late nights, and Robin's mission is, we at Robin make contracts simple. Mm-hmm. Life's complicated enough, contracts shouldn't be. And as somebody who used to drown in the complexity of contracts at 2 a.m. in the morning, that was something that immediately resonated with me.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the size of the prize is just humongous. At Robin, we are transforming a $1 trillion global legal industry. Of course, you have to find your tribes within that, and you have to go after more specific segments. But the overall prize and the opportunity is massive. And what I thought was one of the big pulls is that Robin was and is, even more now than when I joined, backed by some really impressive customers, logos. I mean, in the alternative assets vertical that I look after, the likes of Bain Capital, General Atlantic. On the enterprise side, companies like GE Aerospace, KPMG, sophisticated, huge organizations that trust Robin to be the partner to help them for their legal workflows to move at the pace of business. And that's a big draw and something that we continue to build on.
What is you talk about, finding your tribe within the legal industry. What is the core products at Robin that's made them as a business so successful to now over the past 3-4 years?
It's really a balance always between doubling down on what works and where you're building revenue and that keeps the lights on. And then at the same time, not being so rigid that you stop experimenting and exploring new segments that are going to help keep your trajectory. So we have a range of products and services, actually. Everything from products that help with data extraction, that help transform unstructured data into structured data. We launched a feature today for our Robin AI Reports product, which essentially helps you interrogate a large number of documents. It could be 100 contracts, 1,000, 10,000, or 100,000. It's contract type agnostic. It works on any agreement. And essentially, you get to use that to produce a first draft due diligence report. You get to use that to run audits on what you've signed in the past. You get to use that to produce the sort of reporting that you'd show to your leadership to accelerate their decision making. And so essentially for years and years now, private markets firms, large enterprises, they've sat on all this messy, inconsistent contract data or just contracts. And they haven't been able to transform that into data assets, structured data that they can use to inform decision-making, accelerate their processes. And Robin AI Reports and the answer types feature that we launched today puts a stop to that. It means that your 100,000 contracts, you don't know what's in them. It's all over the place.
And does it at the same time?
Exactly. At the push of a button, you can structure that data into a format that is helpful for whatever the work product is that you're looking for.
And are we at the point now when you say that, the first thing that goes into my head is that, well, how can I trust it? That's the first thing I immediately think when in my previous life as a legal professional, when I get given a 1,000-page contract and I'm told to review it, if I could push a button and it could do it for me, and then in 5 minutes I could reproduce that report back to the partner.
The dream.
The dream. But I would still click that button and there would be something in me that would be like, I need to go through that again, just to make sure.
Which is very natural.
How are we at, how this is probably double-edged question, but are we at the point where we should and can be trusting it because you're partnered with Anthropic through this?
That's right.
And are we at that point? And is that a challenge that you come up against a lot of, that element of trust? Like, Freddie, how can I really trust this AI to review all these contracts that are highly sensitive and not miss a beat?
We come across it a lot, is the headline response, as you would expect.
Yeah.
I mean, large enterprises, and especially private markets firms are risk averse, and so they should be. I mean, take a private equity fund. You've got investors giving you their money. You're a custodian of that. And so it's completely natural that you want to mitigate the risks when you manage that money, when you invest it and you generate returns. And the same with large businesses that run processes that influence a lot of people's lives. So getting it right is important. You've already touched on a few things there. So can and should we trust AI today? The answer is to an extent. And at Robin, we make that easier in several ways. The first one is we've got a human-in-the-loop philosophy. We offer software products and we also offer services. And the common denominator across our software and services offering is the human-in-the-loop. For software, businesses use our software themselves for data extraction, summarization, contract review, querying large data sets, whatever the capability is that they're after. They are using our software and they are the human in the loop. They're a legal professional in their in-house team, they're ops professional, they're finance professional. So our tool gets you almost all of the way to your work product. And then you've got a human in the loop who makes sure that they check it, which takes infinitely less time than starting from a blank page, and then to ultimately complete the work product that you're looking for. Now, on the services side, something that we've seen is also incredibly popular. There's a Robin who's your human in the loop. So those Robins use the same software tools and capabilities to get us, in this case, almost all of the way there. And then it's the Robin on our end in the loop that closes that gap, whatever it is, the last 5, 7, 9%, and supplies you as the customer the final work product. So there's a version where you can use it yourself, or there's a version where you just get the finished work product. Both of them have a human in the loop. So the human in the loop mitigates a lot of the risks and concerns around can we trust AI. We believe at Robin that the most cost-effective, consistent, fastest output is AI plus human in the loop at the stage of tech where we are today. A second factor to mitigate any concerns are the partnerships that you've talked about. So we are partnered with Anthropic, for example. We also partner with AWS. When you use Robin AI, you're really using Robin AI and Anthropic and AWS. Anthropic is all about safety. They've got safety back into their DNA. We share an investor with Anthropic who also happens to chair the UK AI Safety Institute. So even at Robin, we've directionally have that in our DNA as a business. And AWS, we use that Bedrock technology that helps us host private versions of Anthropic's Claude that make sure that we don't send your data anywhere to train generative AI outside of the sort of private client instance where your data is properly secure and segregated. So as a startup, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You can leverage AWS's second to none enterprise-grade data security infrastructure, and you can make sure that what you're building complements that so that you can give customers the comfort that the ultimate output is safe and what they're looking for.
Yeah. And I guess as a general assessment of, because we've kind of touched on a few elements along the way in the Legaltech journey or in the Legaltech space over the last kind of 10 years, we've seen some big previous in Clio and LegalZoom and etc. And now we're seeing this different wave of innovation come in now. Like, I'm going to ask you probably a hard question, but I would like you to, curious as to how you would summarize being so embedded in law as a lawyer and just generally in the space. Like, how would you summarize the waves of innovation over the past, if you could do it in 10 years, but maybe in waves 1, 2, and 3? I don't know where we are in Legaltech, but yeah.
That is a hard question.
It's a hard question.
Let me have a go. I think the first, let's call it era. Let's call it era wave. Yeah, wave. The first wave is document management.
Yeah.
Right. It's things like you've got this rigid, unstructured contract data documents, and you're pushing them through some predefined loop. You're trying to get them signed. You're trying to get them in and out of storage to plug into certain workflows. The second wave is happening right now, if you're asking me. So, and this comes back to the product launch that I was talking about, the Robin AI Reports product. You find a way of structuring that data. So I know that I've signed 10,000 vendor agreements, and the payment terms are all over the place, and the renewals are all over the place, and whatever other terms you're interested in. And I now leverage AI to help me structure that data into something I can use to do a task, to run an audit, to diligence an asset, whatever it is. An interesting development that has already begun is always overlap between the waves that we're seeing is then using agentic systems or agents to use that structured data that you're now able to create with AI to do something, to send that email, to make that call, to reply to that inquiry that you've had. And so we're going from rigid and unstructured to agile and structured, but we're still going to organizing information for the human in the loop to then do a task. I think something that's going to be really interesting, and naturally we're already working on it, is to have AI help you perform the actual task.
Yeah. The reason I ask, I guess, the waves of innovation and where we are, because to that point, document management, and a load of other areas that we're innovating in, but ultimately, is it legal tech, CLM? Is it legal tech, or is it just technology? It's just, because legal tech for me is technology that helps litigators, that helps really specific niche domain areas within law that only lawyers would get benefits from. The kind of legal tech we're talking about is, for me, it feels more, it could be general, it could apply to other industries. It might just not be tech specifically for legal, but do the customers even care?
I love that question because it's essentially, I can see lawyers debating for hours what the right nomenclature is for what's going on in the market that's revolutionizing our jobs. I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
is the short of it. I do think the question is a good prompt. So first of all, you mentioned CLMs. CLMs have been around for a while, and it's tough for them because they've built all this piping that's rigid, that's unstructured, that's rigid.
Yeah.
And if you've built a boat, making that into a car is really hard. And so a lot of the incumbents in the market are now saying we are harnessing the power of AI, but it's very difficult for them. They can't move as fast. They can't keep up with the pace. And so really, we at Robin have had the huge advantage of having been in the space long enough to have been able to pounce at the right time with the advent of Gen AI. But we've been around before Gen AI, but we've never been a CLM, and we're quite vocal about the fact that we aren't a CLM and don't want to be a CLM because we see CLMs as a thing of the past in general. And so the branding aspect of this is interesting because I think a lot of CLMs are currently undergoing the process of trying to rebrand as something that is really difficult for them to become.
Yeah.
The other piece here is that, do people care? I think people care a lot more about, rather than what it's called, is what it does for them. And 2024 has been the year of experimentation, the year of looking into things and getting your bearings in a space that moves really quickly. 2025 is a year of adoption. And in many ways, what it's called is going to become even less relevant this year because it's the year of put up or shut up. I think lots of people have been really curious for a long time, but businesses demand that this produces tangible returns, tangible results this year. And so if you've been getting about saying you use AI, that's probably been just about fine for the last couple of years, but it will stop being fine in 2025. And that's why I'm really glad that, we've put in the time to build AI to make sure that this is the year where we're really accelerating that hockey stick that we've been seeing over the last while.
Do you think it's love that line. 2025 is the year of adoption. Like, who's at risk of being left behind? You know, I think in the private market side of things, I think they have just more money. They have less legacy tech. It's easier for them to adopt. But when we think about law firms, you know, Clifford Chance's, Magic Circles, etc., and those outside of those prestigious circles, just SMB, you know, law firms, if you like. Those guys, how much at risk are they of being left behind? I mean, because the legal space in its right, what we're seeing is a lot of technology companies coming to the legal sector. But, you know, when you look at insurance or health, or you can see insurance companies trying to topple over the incumbents. But in legal, it doesn't seem like that's happening. People aren't trying to create technology-first law firms to, you know, compete with the Magic Circles. Does that make sense? That, you know, who is?
I think not yet.
Yeah, not yet. But you think that's a thing?
I think not yet. I think.
But that could be a thing.
Exactly. I think to flip it slightly, rather than focusing on the risk of who's going to be left behind, I think there's massive opportunity to level the playing field and to use this tech to do that.
Yeah.
To be able to empower a law firm of 3 or 5 or 7 headcount to be able to work on much larger litigations, bigger M&A transactions, using AI to level the playing field versus the big guys. Now, that's not going to happen overnight. And as you say, we're only just at the start of seeing that. But we at Robin definitely think that one of the most gratifying and rewarding things about working in this tech is its ability to level the playing field.
Interesting. The great equalizer. So okay, so how does a lawyer or law firm, in your mind, how do they think about putting GenAI into use, into practice, using it in the day-to-day whilst navigating the ethics and regulations? A lawyer that is not tech savvy.
Right. In 2024 and prior to that, I think a lot of companies tried the horizontal approach. This is the Vertical SaaS Podcast, so give me a second.
Unbundled. They've unbundled it, yeah.
The one size fits all type solution, an inch deep and a mile wide. And I think people have really started to understand that that's not how to get the most out of AI. And lawyers are starting to understand that. Because fine-tuning models, and we sometimes say, Anthropic takes their models to university, we take them to law school. There is a big benefit in terms of the capability of these models, making sure that they become really good at quite specific things that they can help you with. And so to be specific then, lawyers today, in-house legal teams, for example, they get Q&A from different parts of their company all the time. Hey, what's in this contract? Or do you remember what we agreed with this guy? Or when does this renewal come up? AI helps, running AI over existing databases helps those lawyers to find those answers in seconds rather than spending hours control Fing through documents that they would have previously used. That's a very specific use case.
Yes.
We have a product called Query and AI Native.
Which I love specific use case. We don't get enough of them in the podcast.
Right. I'll keep going. So that's at Robin AI, we call that Query, our AI native secure contract repository. Another very specific use case is due diligence. So you need to look at 1,000 contracts of all different types, and you need to produce some sort of report that highlights the key legal and commercial risks. You can either have to read every single agreement and you can manually fish out the things that matter, or you can use AI, have the key risks extracted, summarized, and then with a human in the loop, you run a test to make sure that everything's accurate and up to scratch. Again, that doesn't get you 100% of the way there just yet, but it gets you 85, 95% of the way there, and so massively reduces the amount of work that has to be done manually. And ultimately, that frees up folks to do work that they actually enjoy, right? There's very few people who like to sit at their desk at 3 a.m. fishing through customer contracts,
Oh,
getting
really?
our payment
Oh,
terms.
I love it.
That's why you left sooner than I did. And so it frees folks up for that strategic work, for the human work, the relationship bits. For private markets firms, that's looking after your investors better than you have before. Improving your relationships with regulators. And for big enterprises, that is making sure that you don't lose people at the rate that you are, that they don't feel that overburdened, that bringing in more balance for them. Ultimately, that all of that crystallizes into extra dollars for your business at the end of the month.
And that tees me up perfectly for my next question, which I actually didn't think it would. But to that point of reduction of time and hours spent doing these tasks frees up the time to do what? Like, is it because when we talk about the billable hour, it's I criticise it, it's outdated. I think I don't think it's outdated yet in the legal industry, but we're very quickly, I think, getting to that point. The year of adoption, businesses will be asking, what is it that what technology you're leveraging? Law firm, what legal team, what technology you're leveraging? How quickly are you going to be doing this? Why is it taking you that long? Because we're speaking to X, Y, Z, and they've got this. So I think the rinsing of how many hours can I squeeze out of this client, I think is slowly going away. But do you think we're actually close to shifting that? And is it going to be? We're still a long way off it, effectively? Because I think that's more of a cultural thing we're trying to change as opposed to technology just changing it.
I think you're right. We're starting to see that. It'll take time, but it is happening already. And I think this plugs well into one of the usual questions around the fears of adopting AI, and be that private practice lawyers or in-house lawyers or really any professional whose job can be facilitated by AI. At Robin, we don't see AI replacing lawyers.
No.
We see lawyers using AI replacing lawyers who don't. And so I don't think that private practice lawyers are going to be out of a job anytime soon. But they will be able to do more work, adding value to their clients in shorter periods of time. And especially on the junior end, that work is going to be more enjoyable. They aren't going to spend, you will no longer have to be a 7-year associate to sit at the negotiation table, because prior to that, you were simply sifting through contracts to create the cheat sheet for the person negotiating. That cheat sheet can now be created by AI, which means that as a more junior professional, you're going to be able to sit at the table and you're going to be able to learn those personal skills, the negotiation skills, the relationship building skills, the bits that make your life, your work life more enjoyable, and ultimately the bits that add the value to the client that AI isn't necessarily replacing in the immediate future.
And ultimately, the bit that as we grow up to be lawyers, it's the bit that we become a bit romantic about. It's the bit that the swashbuckling idea of, battling in court or doing the thing that Harvey Specter does in Suits, and he's walking, all the glamorous side of it. But, and I'm not saying we're all that naive to think that, but there's an element of that I think going into the job, we don't quite realise how burdened and how stressful the job can be from reviewing something like 1,000-page documents, and it takes you 2 weeks. So lawyers' roles that are now evolving as a junior person or as someone that's just studied, qualified in law, and is thinking about how, this Gen AI stuff, there's lawyers that I'm speaking to that sound more like technologists than they do lawyers. What do you think, or would you advise that people should be doing early on in their career now? Because the people at the partner level, at the senior end, it's obvious the value they add, and it's going to be very hard to displace them. But the junior people coming through, what do you think they should be doing now to get ahead of it?
Learn the technology. Become an expert. If you have anxieties around what AI means for your job, face those anxieties, become an expert, and focus on how AI enhances your workflows, enhances your work products, makes you a better lawyer rather than being a lawyer instead of you. And you were talking about the partners there. It's more difficult, absolutely not impossible, but more difficult for folks that have been in the industry for 20, 25 years to adapt to this sort of change. On the other hand, they need to, because they need their firm to stay competitive. And so they are dependent on more junior professionals to help them adopt this technology, learn this technology, and make sure that the firm itself stays on the cutting edge of what's out there. Because as you say, clients will, and very much already are, starting to be much more demanding about how quick something needs to be done, because they assume that technology is in the mix to reduce the manual lift. And so if you can position yourself as a young professional as someone helping your boss, if it's in-house, your head of legal or chief legal officer or the partner in the law firm that you work at, to build that bridge and gain that competitive edge through legal AI, then do that. And I think ultimately it's a massive opportunity, much more than it's a reason to be anxious.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I do think, just to play devil's advocate, I do think there's a lot of jobs that do go.
Which will be replaced by other jobs.
Paralegals, potentially, maybe even junior lawyers. Maybe that's just a whole segment that just completely goes.
I think we're
not anytime soon, but I do think that's a real thing to happen in the future.
To come back to our philosophy at Robin, we and I passionately, actually, at a personal level, I believe that AI will enhance those jobs, because there is a lot of work out there. Take M&A lawyers, there are a lot of deals to be done.
Yeah.
And what we'll see with AI is that more deals will be done in the same amount of time, and we will still need lawyers. We will still need humans in the loop to make sure that the efficiency gains that AI helps us with are directed in the right way and are managed the right way. That is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I believe that we will need that at junior, at mid, and at senior level. And so if you become an expert, your work will look different. What a paralegal does today is going to be dramatically different from what a paralegal does in 5 years' time, but there will be paralegals. Just that it's an opportunity for the role of a paralegal to have an even bigger impact of the business or the firm that they operate in, thanks to this technology enhancing their outputs.
That's really interesting. So that's kind of on the roles or potential roles. When we talk about where will the future of legal businesses be, I've got a quote here. Chris Combs, the co-founder of LinkSquare, said that we should prioritize addressing specific pain points or use cases rather than developing broad general applications. We have spoke about this, but again, when you think about the genesis of Robin, what was that specific use case they focused on? It was contracts. Now they're starting to mushroom out and build more products. But are you kind of seeing any pressing needs or pain points in the legal industry as a whole that, you're just maybe sitting thinking to yourself, people are sleeping on that? Gen AI could make a massive impact there. Or are you just too focused on what's going on at Robin AI?
We think about this all the time, because AI is in its infancy, and legal AI certainly is. And we're all just scratching the surface of all the incredible things that we can do with this. And again, personally, I have really high conviction that what it means, AI is going to help lawyers be lawyers again. Because being a lawyer should be about being an expert, giving advice, being a trusted advisor to folks that make business decisions, or that in whatever sector you're talking about. And all the manual, repetitive, tedious work that has snuck into law over the last, I don't know how many years, many years, it's meant that being a transactional lawyer has become more and more process driven, more and more tedious, and it's been less and less about actually practicing law. And injecting AI into the equation means that lawyers can be lawyers again. That's what I believe.
I wonder when they stopped being lawyers in your mind and the legal industry's mind. When did they stop and start becoming admin monkeys?
I think when I was in private practice, there was always a mix of work. There was always the tedious admin work, and then there's the work that you enjoy more. I think AI is about rebalancing that and making sure there's more of the work that you enjoy doing. You and I, we both know that any job is going to have aspects to it that you're not particularly fond of. But I think AI can rebalance that equation. When we're talking about missed opportunities, the key here is to keep moving. The surface area that is AI and the opportunities, it's moving so fast, comes back to having the right partners. The fact that we're partnered with Anthropic means that we have access to the latest and safest and fastest models out there, often before they're even public. I mean, our engineers, our researchers share Slack channels with the folks at Anthropic and at AWS to make sure, that we get to input on what's being developed that might be helpful for us, and that it's a sort of sounding board relationship. And we're incredibly grateful to have that access and feel really privileged. And so we are passing that privilege, that access onto our customers, of course, by making sure that they know that they're hitching their cart to the right horse. And so missed opportunities, I think if you find the right partners, you can reduce the risk of missing those opportunities because you're always staying at the forefront of what's out there and how that might help you build something that adds value to your customers.
Kind of Robin, the thing, and I always ask this, and it's I never get the answer. And it's just one of these questions that, when you have someone or a company at the top of the game, and they're pretty dominant, like Robin AI and Harvey, etc. Those are household names in the legal tech industry. But I do often think to myself when I get someone sat in this chair, I'm just like, what is it about you guys that's just made you so much better than anyone that's tried this before? Is that maybe a bit of timing in terms of the Gen AI unlock that maybe traditional software couldn't fix? But yeah, I just wonder what that mixture of is what's going on at Robin AI that has then led on to these incredible partnerships with the likes of Anthropic.
Lots of things. I think folks are typically looking for this is the one reason. Before I answer that, or I make an attempt at answering that, perhaps they're picking you up on a couple of the names that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. We are not AI for law firms. Some of our competitors, we have a bigger vision. We are AI for business. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that technology performs its role, serves its purpose in helping law move at the pace of business. Mm-hmm. And that's why we work with a lot of really large businesses. We work with large private market firms. We also work with some law firms. But the vision there is much bigger. The reason why that's successful, or one of the reasons why it's successful, is there's always a bit of timing. Timing is everything. I mean, our CEO and founder, Richard Robinson, he started the company in 2019, so much before the Gen AI hype of ChatGPT that started in November 2022. And so I think a lot of it is about essentially Richard's perseverance of keeping going and building something.
And he's got the domain expertise coming from Clifford Chance.
Precisely. Yeah. He's got the domain expertise. He's got that founder market fit that I was talking about, which helps in so many ways. It helps with distribution. It helps with building a product because you used to experience the pain point that you're now solving for people. And that doesn't just mean that your solutions are tailored and work, but also that the rapport built with your customers is a lot easier because they believe you when you say that you feel their pain and this is the right thing to take it away from them. So I think the founder market fit was great. The perseverance of being in a position in the market where you already have a lot of customers, when a new infrastructure level defining technology comes out, you're well positioned to leverage that and to capture market share very quickly. I think the other piece is moving fast. We've discussed it. Speed is everything.
Why?
It's
because not every founder comes on here and says that. Most do, but some I've done recording 3 days ago with a founder in San Francisco of a AI-driven financial advisory platform, and she was the opposite. She was like, we really took our time. We took 4 or 5 years to really get this right. Not before we launched, but that whole speed, fail fast. They just never took that. But why do you think it's so important to what would seem most startups and founders?
Lots of reasons. First one is you got to keep your A players, your talent bar engaged. I think the folks that you really want working and building your company, they get bored very quickly. They're really good, and they need to feel challenged, and they need to see you move the needle as a business together on a permanent basis. And so just to keep the best people and to attract the best people, you got to move really fast. The second and sort of obvious point is that if you have venture funding, I mean, we at Robin, we're very fortunate to be backed by some of the world's most prolific investors. We've got folks who are taking a long view, so we're not suffering from short-termism in the way that we make decisions. You know, when you have a cap table that includes venture funding, ultimately you need to prove out that you have the traction that you need to get to the next round to make sure that you get to keep building and that you get to keep putting value into the hands of your customers. And when you're in a competitive space, particularly when a piece of technology or a certain segment is as popular as AI is right now, there's a lot of competition to capture that funding, a lot of competition to capture that market share. And speed wins the race every single time. I do think that when you're in a space that isn't in the spotlight as much as AI is right now, you have a little bit more time, perhaps. I still think that speed's incredibly important.
Yeah.
But we're in a winner takes most market, and Robin AI, we're going to win this market. We are winning this market. We're going to keep winning this market. And if that's the goal, and if anything that falls below that bar is unacceptable, then speed is non-negotiable.
Win most market. What was the other thing you said to me in New York? Never lose a deal on cost price. That was another just random thing that popped into my head there.
I think as you mature as a business, you tighten up.
Becomes less so.
You tighten up.
I was asking you that because I was talking about my early days of Zanata and you know how we're talking about positioning yourself, but
the focus has to be customer delight. That's one of our core values of Robin. You have to focus on, certainly at the beginning religiously, how do we move the needle for our customers? How does this save time? How does this save hard dollars? How does this make people happier so you don't have as much employee turnover, which again crystallizes into hard time or dollar savings? And that's the most important thing. Once you're onto something that puts value in customers' hands, the pricing and the tightening up the go-to market, that's going to fall into place. It needs attention, and it's something that we continuously work on, but the customer focus is the difference between live or die over time.
Yeah, great. I'm conscious of our time here, but I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because it's a subject that you're very close to, you're very plugged in, which is the M&A world, of course.
That triggers me.
Yep, there we go, sitting up, ready for it. The biggest opportunities in M&A. This year's a big year for M&A. It was last year in PE, it continues to be this year, so they say. What do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges in this space tying into the legal aspect of it?
2024 was not as much of a banner year as the PE or M&A space expected. Inflation, high interest rates, macroeconomic uncertainties, all of those lovely buzz terms that you can read about wherever you get your news.
Yeah.
What's real is that they've meant that liquidity hasn't freed up as much as folks thought at the beginning in January 2024. So there's still record amounts of dry powder. GPs are sitting on millions and millions, actually billions of dry powder that they need to deploy. And so what we saw in 2024 is that secondary transactions, i.e. where you swap investors out of a fund as in you sell an interest or you buy an interest in a fund rather than the asset, or deploying capital into an asset directly as a GP. That's been a way of getting some liquidity, if you're an investor in LP, out of your fund investments during the year. We expect that to continue going. The secondaries boom is gonna continue going, but we expect that this year in 2025, the M&A deal bonanza, i.e. the primary deals where GPs get to buy and sell assets in their portfolio, that's going to explode because there's so much pent up capital. And the difference here is that, the US elections are passed now, that uncertainty's out of the way.
Yeah.
We're entering a deregulation era. Lots of other folks globally have gone to the polls. I mean, France, India, in post-election years are typically banner years for M&A, given that some of the uncertainty subsides. Interest rates are coming down. Inflation is leveling out, and central banks are starting to get a handle on that. So the stars look like they're aligning for an M&A bonanza. And so the opportunities are...
For you guys is insane.
It's fantastic. I mean, there's always a lot of contracts, but obviously when deal activity goes up, particularly for the alt assets private market segment that I help look after, this is a huge opportunity. We want our customers to stay focused on creating value, if it's private markets, for their investors or otherwise for their customers, and to do the job of building those relationships, picking the right assets, looking after the businesses that they've bought or are selling to create value. We don't want them to be distracted by the contract work or the diligence work or a lot of the stuff that technology and AI can help with. And so we see the opportunity to really use 2025 to prove even more that when it gets really busy, when you're overwhelmed as an in-house lawyer with what you've got going on, that you can lean on technology as a trusted partner to get things off your plate and focus on what matters.
What do you want to see less of in 2025? Like, you see the waves of innovation, if you like, low-code platforms, CLMs coming out. Like, we've done that to death. We don't need any more of them. Like, so what do you not want to see more of? Like, a saturated space, and what do you think the legal tech space needs? What do you want to see less of? Sorry, what do you want to see more of in terms of innovation?
More of, I think, specificity. We've covered this tangentially before. If you're a business and you want to adopt AI, start small, pick some low-hanging fruit use cases. Can be non-legal, summarization of meeting notes, helping you with your time management, all the way up to, on the legal side, using AI native contract repositories, starting to accelerate your contract review, using a product like Robin AI Reports to make your messy, unstructured contracts into data assets that you can use to run audits and so forth. So more specificity. And I guess the flip side is just less fluff. We need providers of legal tech and legal AI owe it to their prospects and their customers to show returns, time savings, dollar savings. And I often hear from players in the space, the provider told us that there's lots of return, but it's really hard to measure. Call me too German about it, but if you can't measure it, it's probably not real. And so we need more.
You can't put into dollar value. You're right. It's probably not real.
We need business cases, and we need proof of delivery. And so that's why, you need to partner with folks who help you build a business case together that arms you as the champion for whatever solution you want to add to your tech stack, to go to management and to have everything you need to pitch. This is how much time we're going to save. This is how much money we're going to save. And I do believe, and I think we at Robin do believe that 2025, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that. And so we'll see some of the saturation in the space perhaps thinning out a little bit in terms of who's emerging as credible solutions to actually add value.
What a beautiful way to end it, Freddie. That brings us to the end perfectly. Thank you for coming on. It's been a lot of fun.
That was great. Thanks so much, Gavin.